Just building on what Dr. Elias has been saying on the study, I will straight go into the main findings. He's of course talked about the objectives of the study. He's given us the justification, and then he has given also the brief background of where we are coming from. Formally, to begin talking about open data in this country, we look back at the fanfare of the previous government during the time which the president, former president Mwai Kibaki, in 2011, when he launched the portal. And that was the time many of us began talking about open data. But the issue of open data goes back way back before even the formal launching of the open data. So in this study, we were just trying to scratch the surface, trying to look at what is this landscape that we are trying to understand. If you look at the slide on the wall, it talks about the open data landscape. There are about 4 categories of people that we encountered when we were doing this study. And this came through the findings that we were trying to analyze, asking ourselves, who are these categories of people who use data from open government sources? We call open government sources because there are so many places where people go to look for information. And it's not only the portal. Portal is just one of them. And in the first category, these are kind of people who actually are not aware that there is government information in any form, anywhere. And perhaps they have an attitude that they don't care about whether the information is there or not. The second category of people are people actually who know, but they don't even take initiative, or maybe they don't want to bother themselves. And then the third, there are people who know about this government open sources they use, but they are not sure whether it comes from the government open sources or not. The fourth, and which is more interesting, especially for people who are talking about open data, there are people who know that they are using information from government open portal and they know about it. They can cite, they can tell you, I went to the government portal to get the national census statistics of 2009. So this gives us the landscape. Now, how did we arrive at some of the sources? Some of the sources that we mapped out, as Elias indicated, we did a focus group discussion, and we were trying to understand how people access government information, public sector information, and the area we were studying are the low-income areas. And some of the sources that they were able to cite were places like the chief's office. That's where people go to look for information. They cited the religious centers, they cited community centers, and some were able to tell us that they go online to look for information. So we were able to map out these sources. Then we wanted to understand how people use these sources to access this information. That's why if you look at what we have mapped out there, there are other sources which were not able to come out from the focus group discussion. So someone will be asking, how did you arrive at a chief's office? It came from the population that we were sampling, the population that we were studying, just to understand the economy of their information. So, what are some of the issues that we can summarize from our study? One of the things that emerge from the study we have is that there is a mismatch. When you ask people whether they know about open data or they know about government information, they will not clearly tell you. It's not clear to us and also to them. So that's why we would say the first statement is that there's a mismatch between citizens who want to have and the data the government portal is providing. And then most people go to local intermediaries. Again, we are looking at the low income areas. And if someone has been in Kenya and someone who has traveled in some of these places we are talking about, you would actually see this picture, the picture that we are trying to paint here. That the chief center, the religious centers, the community centers play a critical role when it comes to access to government information and also access to service. So that's one thing that actually stood out from our study. And then currently, again, in the rural areas, you find that community centers and religious centers play a critical role compared to the urban slums. You find that certain areas are preferred by certain groups of people. Again, go back to the landscape that we have mapped out, those 4 categories of the citizens of this country. So after saying this, what is the key finding? Our finding, we only had 2. That government information forms a critical part in the public life of Kenyans. So if someone is seated here and who works in the public sector, know that there are people out there who actually look for that information. And it's a very critical information in their public life. They want to function. If now you go back, if you go in details in this booklet that we have, you can look at the kind of information that people are looking for. And of course, you can see the presentation of the 2 areas. People who have looked for government information in the last 2 years, you can see the percentages, the rural and the urban. They are very high percentages. That's why we come up with that conclusion that public information forms a critical part of public life for Kenyans, especially the area where we were studying. This is some of the sampled public information that people sought. You can see the percentages that are high. For instance, when it comes to issues of for instance, KCP, these are some of the areas that we narrowed in. For instance, education and health. You can see the kind of information that is emerging in those 2 areas. The second major finding in our study is that traditional intermediaries, especially the local chiefs, play a key role in access to government information and services. And we were informally discussing in our office, and we have our office somewhere here. If you walk in all this area of Kilimani, you won't find a chief's office. But if you go down to Kibera, there are several of them. That tells you about access to government services. And that's why this kind of finding comes out from our study. And then look at where people seek information again in those two scenarios, the urban and the rural. You see the chief's office emerge as a key source for people in urban slums. And then when you look at the rural, community centers and religious centers emerge as a very key area where people seek government information. Therefore, when we did not go to assess the capacities of these centers. We didn't evaluate, we didn't audit the centers. But we said that if we were to understand and if we were to optimize the chief center in public service delivery, then the question of capacity comes up. How, for instance, would the Ministry of ICT look at the information economy in the chief center, in community centers, in religious centers, and build the capacity so that the government open sources would be enhanced, not only to continue doing what they're doing, but to do something extra that the government open sources are trying to tell us. That was one of the things that we tried to bring forward. Thank you.